week in and week out, you're getting kicked as a quarterback, you know what? Ultimately, it falls on the OC.
I guess I'm just going to disagree with you 1,000,000,000%.
I think D'Amico gave us a precursor on his exit interview.
That was an interesting shortness, but I still didn't think that it mattered. I mean, he was short, but it was short. It was short. It was curt.
I mean, you have been adamant that he was not going to get fired.
No,
what do you think? What do you think now about the whole situation?
Okay, so I've gotten some pretty good intel behind the scenes. What is one of the things that I said? There was one caveat where I said, unless this is the case.
Unless CJ didn't want him. Yeah. Now, okay, so.
Now, I was
heard rumbling behind it. I don't want to put the blame on CJ on this thing.
No. I'm not putting the blame on him. I don't think CJ was tight with Bobby Slowik like I thought. I don't think he's tight with him like maybe his answers at press conference would give you the.
Well, if I'm
I think
CJ,
he's smart. I think CJ's smart at how he's answered questions.
If I'm CJ, I can't be nearly as happy with or confident in Bobby Slowik as I was my rookie year. I just can't be. Not with the offensive line problems that couldn't be fixed. Not with the beating that he took with all the sacks. One of the league leaders in sacks.
Well, all that stuff has to get fit. Chris Strausser's gone. The assistant offensive line coach, Cole Popovich, is gone. Like, I think CJ probably understands.
Ultimately, though, we keep saying that, okay, offensive – listen, it falls on the offensive coordinator. It falls on the offensive coordinator.
No, but the line protection – I'm telling you, as a line coach's son, it all falls on the offensive line coach.
I've seen a lot of offensive coordinators, too, though. And you know what? They work intimately with the offensive line coach.
But getting guys blocked.
And week in and week out, you're getting kicked as a quarterback. You know what? Ultimately, it falls on the OC.
I guess I'm just going to disagree with you 1,000,000,000% because your job's no line coach is to get guys executing properly. That's not the OC's job. The OC is protections. It's getting stuff like that. That's fine if there's missed protection calls off the rip, which also means that CJ is not allowed to change protection calls.
No one's saying that Bobby Slowik was teaching technique.
Coach is not. That's what I'm saying. The O-line coach.
Nobody is saying that. What I'm saying is that if it's week in and week out, and it's continuing problems. And by the way, there were protection problems because they couldn't even pick up simple stunts.
So
they
Shaq
couldn't
Mason
pick up simple stunts.
Is Shaq gone? Is
No.
consistent
Obviously,
getting behind
the go.
Yeah, is it consistent getting behind the sticks because of Laramie Tunsil jumping?
But who always goes first?
Gone too?
Who always goes first? The coach.
I know
first.
that, and that was my point. I knew the O-line coach was going to be gone. I knew that he needed to be gone. Honestly, if you continue to have these mistakes against stunts and twists, the thing is, and I think the same thing could be said for D'Amico and Bobby Slowik. They don't have as much confidence in D'Amico after his second year. It's the same way you said that about Slowik. I don't think there's any doubt that I don't have as much confidence in
I don't know.
In the quarterback. The quarterback wasn't as good this year.
Here's about that. I mean, Dell watched the Miami with Brian Flores for years, right? What Brian Flores couldn't get right was the OC. He had to change OCs all the time. He couldn't get that right. I'll tell you this. D'Amico got the defense right this year.
Wait.
That's his specialty.
No, hold on, Dell. Don't you go anywhere. One of the problems is that, you can go wherever you need to go. One of the problems, Dell and I talked about this. He couldn't get the OC right. You know what his problem was? He couldn't figure it out. Like defensive coordinators have, this is not going to be a defend Bobby. So I'm going to tell you the information I have. Defense coordinators are notorious for not being able to lock in on an OC. They can't. They shuffle. Mike Tomlin has done it. You have Brian Flores did it. I'm worried that D'Amico's going to do it. I'm worried that these guys, because they in their heart, they see football differently than OCs. OCs are too finesse typically for head coach DCs. But I don't think this came. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think this. I think ultimately this came from. I don't think CJ liked him as much as we thought, based on some conversations I had over the weekend, which actually was very surprising to me because CJ's given the right answers. But then I did hearken back to, I was told before the draft that the thing with CJ Stroud, this is before I was just doing draft research on CJ Stroud. It wasn't a text or anything. I told you guys the story about he and maybe you didn't hear me, he and Bobby Slowik had a run-in before the draft. So what happened was, I'll tell you the whole thing now that Slowik's gone. CJ Stroud came to visit the Texans, and Bobby Slowik was telling them, okay, they were watching stuff on tape. Now, before I tell you this, when CJ was at Ohio State, he really didn't talk to the OC at all. That's not his guy. He didn't think he knew ball. This coming from somebody who knows CJ intimately. He didn't think the offense coordinator was very smart. So he would only talk to Ryan Day. Ryan Day was the guy who had to communicate with CJ, which I didn't love that, honestly, before the draft process. And it played into some of my thoughts on CJ in terms of coachability. He said he didn't know ball. Ryan Day's my guy. And so I'm going to listen to Ryan Day. And what I heard was that he didn't, like, his communication was with Ryan Day and not the offense coordinator. Okay, well, that's a little strange, but whatever. He comes into Houston. Bobby Slowik is trying to tell him some stuff, and CJ just says, oh, yeah, I know that we call this, whatever, XY switch, whatever it would be at Ohio State. And apparently maybe it happened a couple times, and Bobby Slowik just kind of jumped him and said, I don't give a what you call it Ohio State. That's college. This is pro football. And Bobby kind of got in his face about it, And CJ's not one to back down at all. And CJ, and I don't know if Bobby was testing him or I don't know what the deal was, but CJ jumped up and got back in his face. And it was very contentious. It had to be kind of broken up. And so when CJ went to his next draft meeting, and I talked to the team where CJ went. He went to his next.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a special announcement. I love Coors Light. I've always loved Coors Light, and I always will love Coors Light. I'm doing my job, keeping Texas chill. Are you? Are you doing your part? Do your part. Keep Texas chill.
Next draft meeting, and because I asked this team, hey, did you hear anything about this with CJ Stroud? And they said, oh, we asked CJ how his last visit went, which was Houston. And he said, terrible. I don't think I'll be going there. And people who train, like CJ's whole crew, did not want him to go to Houston. And they didn't think he was going to Houston because it was he and Bobby got into it. And then CJ was drafted by Houston, which that's one of the reasons I was really surprised. Like I kind of wrote, after finding that out, I wrote CJ off from the Texans, and I thought, okay, this is Will Anderson for sure. And so when they traded for him, I was very surprised because I knew there was that lingering stuff there. But then in discussing all of it last year, I heard it was squashed. Like there was no issue. Bobby and him were good. So I didn't think it was any kind of a deal anymore. But I do wonder, based on the Ohio State stuff with his OC there, based on his pre-dust up, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think CJ just didn't – I just don't think he liked Bobby Slowik as a play coach. And I will say, one other person that I talked to, the same one who knew a little something about the relationship between Slowik and CJ, said, in his opinion, based on what he knows about Bobby Slowik, he's a by-the-book coordinator, but he doesn't really have the same feel for the Shanahan scheme that maybe some other coordinators have, which could lead into CJ, who knows ball. I mean, CJ knows ball. It could be where CJ's like, I just don't feel comfortable with this. And
okay. CJ, I think probably had to give. I don't know. I'm sure they talked to CJ about it.
Yeah, he had to give his thumbs up.
There's
right?
no way you don't. I don't know that he gave his.
Which I didn't think
what role. We don't know what role CJ played in it. D'Amico's press conference, in which he was very short and said, yeah, I saw some improvement at the end, and that was it.
That's it.
That was the writing on the wall that Bobby Slowik. Listen, you can't do what they did at Christmas. You can't give up 8 sacks against the Chiefs. You can't regress the way that CJ did. You can't get your quarterback beat up the way that he did without paying the consequences.
It has to be more than about a protection thing, because, like I said, you could switch out offensive.
Even still, he should have schemed it better. He should have planned. Yeah, he should have called quicker a passing game. All of the things that
all the things
listen,
he did after
I don't
that.
know about adjustments. Bobby Slowik said it himself. There's no adjustments.
But
at halftime.
But he did all that stuff after that. To me, that's why I don't think you could have changed offensive line coaches, and the offensive line coach, the coordinator relies on the offensive line coach. They work together, but he relies. My dad used to have arguments with Bruce Arians about 5-man protections all the time. Like, Bruce thinks he can be protected with this. That was not an issue. The Texans weren't sitting in 5-man protections all the time. That was not the case.
No.
It was guys performing poorly. It was not too many men.
Well, it
versus
was
the
a
block.
chip that wasn't even really a chip by your tight end, who's just
yeah, but that's not. But like all the tight ends.
Well,
are
it's also
injured.
putting a tight end against the defensive end. I mean,
what I'm trying to actually make more of the case against Bobby Slowik for you. I'm not. I don't think. I think you're coming up way short if you just say protection stuff, because you can get rid of the offensive line coach and then see a third time. I think it's more than that. I think that they weren't happy with how Bobby got to certain things, but I think there's also somebody in the front row of the suite. And we're not real happy with him because they paid him more money. This is something I found out also. They were paying him more. Do you remember Bobby got a raise?
Yeah. No,
you didn't remember that, did you? I had to go back and look. Bobby Slowik, I guess, got a raise last year after he had interviews and all that. After by the way, a successful season last year.
Right.
The Texans gave him more money.
I'll tell you what else.
I think
what
one
else,
of the owners.
I'll tell you what else hurt him is that Bobby slow to call plays too.
Yeah.
Getting to the line, it's like you see other teams are at the line of scrimmage with 20 seconds left on the clock. The Texans are getting there with 7.
You can't do that, man.
You
got to get the plays in quicker.
You got to get them in quicker, and he never improved. And he even said that.
But he's had 2 years.
During the year, he said, we got to get to the line of scrimmage quicker, and they didn't.
But see, CJ has 2 years in. Bobby Slowik has 2 years in. Like, this is like, these are things you learn as you go on. You're not a polished product after 2 years. DeMeco Ryans had no one's firing him. That dude was terrible in some of the decision making. Well, but he's young. I mean, he's 2 years in. I think CJ Stroud and DeMeco all suffer from the same things. They're not experienced enough right now, and that's normal. That's actually not unusual. They're still growing along with it. This is why I don't think Gerard Johnson can be offensive coordinator. People are saying, "What about Gerard Johnson?" No. I mean, you go back to a rookie play caller.
Yeah, I don't know.
With a different offense, I think you got to bring in an OC with experience, and he's got to bring in his own O-line coach.
Right.
You have to do that.
Well, we're going to hear DeMeco talking about Chip Kelly.
But hang on. What do you think about the fact that maybe Miss Hannah was not real happy? That I guess I'm supposed to say that Cal and Hannah, Cal and Hannah weren't happy with the performance of the offense because they listen to the fans too. And you know what fans and Twitter say, and they're always fan oriented, and everyone wanted him out of there, and they gave him more money, and the performance wasn't as good as we all know. And I would say you might want to pay attention to ownership in this one too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it didn't that the social media campaign against
them.
Bobby Slowik didn't play a role.
Oh no,
I wouldn't be
you
surprised
guys
at all.
did your job because Hannah listens to that
you did.
stuff.
No question, you did your job.